it's a question of values, and are we willing to accept a world where some people die because they're poor, and they're also poor because they're sick? Or is that something that we finally say, no, we're not going to tolerate this anymore? And that very much ties into this organisation and what we're trying to do. Hi, my name is Meredith Basie. I'm the Executive Director for UAEM North America.
My name is Carolyn Witten. I'm the Executive Director for UAEM Europe. What we're really talking about is equitable access. The paradigm as it stands is so unjust, it's so unfair, it's so absurd, actually, that people can't afford medicine in some places where you simply can get it somewhere else, or they can't afford it because it is a ridiculous price. The fact that this is the case is so absurd. And what we want is to take away the absurdity and for people to have the ability to get access to healthcare. It's that simple, and I think it's almost too simple.
Year after year, report after report, people are dying. All the while we continue to talk. We cannot afford 10 more years of inaction. We cannot afford 10 more years of criminally high drug prices just to talk about small strides in IPR reform. With this action, we publicly declare our intention to fight for a more ethical R&D system and the inclusion of an R&D agreement in 2016. Make medicine for people, not for profit.
Having society understand that it should be a right to have access to essential medication, and people should be able to afford them without feeling that they have to pay 4 times the median salary. I mean, that's absurd. £100,000 in the UK for a breast cancer drug, $84,000 in the US for a hepatitis C medication, and only now, because the wealthier and sort of Europeans and North Americans are beginning to be affected, that suddenly a light has been shone on the rest of the world where this has been happening, and 10 million people die annually as a result. I mean, that's criminal. I think it is criminal fundamentally, and the fact that pharmaceutical companies do the bare minimum, I would argue, to make that change. It's very superficial, the response that they give. So something fundamental, there needs to be some serious system change for us to achieve what we need to achieve.
What you say is very true in the sense that this actually affects everybody. This is not something that we can ignore. It's not something that we can pretend is happening somewhere else. This is happening here and now to everybody that lives on this planet. And it's not acceptable.
What we want is affordable and equitable access to essential medication, I think.
Absolutely.
However that may be, we know that generic competition and obviously having non-exclusive licensing, this kind of thing, helps to contribute to affordable medication.
People who need medicines and who need health care should get it. Actually believing that and feeling it to be true. Now for me, in the AIDS context, it happened because I had been teaching in South Africa for 6 months. And I went back to the university the next year, and they had done anonymous HIV testing of the student population, and 27% of the female students were HIV positive. And none of them had access to treatment. And therefore, all of them would be dead within 10 years. And so to me, that was just an unsupportable situation, because every time I thereafter walked into a classroom, I basically saw, though I didn't know who it was, I just saw, the pall of death that was hanging over the class. Palpable outrage, but that's true. And we have to think about the most vulnerable populations, and many of those populations are people in other countries, but they're also social outsiders. In the in the hepatitis C context, it's people who inject drugs, for example, are disproportionately adversely affected.
Back in 1995, a trade-related intellectual property system was set up, and the goal of that system was to make medicines become a patentable good, just like any other good. Previously, we'd had patents on all sorts of things, on, whether it was on car brands, whether it was on Nike, and all these kind of branding things. Medicines just now became in the same pool. What that agreement did, which we now call it the TRIPS agreement, was it really changed the way that medicines were innovated and developed, and it was a great turning point in it, because before then you could produce medicines without worrying about patent laws. You had India, who was able to produce medicines for its societies. Other countries were able to do it. By signing on to that TRIPS agreement, they were no longer able to do it. The problem is that TRIPS agreement has been around now for 20 years. It had certain provisions in it which meant that it became applied in all countries, and now there's only really the least developed countries in the world that don't have to apply TRIPS yet, and we're having a lot of discussions about that right now. But it's very hard to change it. We've been trying to use the flexibilities that were inside that agreement, which were built in, where we should be able to have certain mechanisms that would enable us to access certain drugs or to make certain drugs available. It's been very difficult. It's a constant battle. So in my dream is not a reform of the patent system. My dream is to turn away completely from that system and say medicines are not something that should be patented. Medicines are some public good that should be available for everybody equitably, and they should be done on the principles of the needs of people, actual real needs of people, and that it's not dependent on a patent system or on a monopoly system.
So if you think about the patent system, it's supposed to give you a 20-year monopoly so that you incentivize innovation, right? And now we're seeing these outrageous price increases for very old drugs that are off patent, like cycloserine for TB or Daraprim for toxoplasmosis. For Daraprim or cycloserine, that 20 years ended in the 70s. Those drugs are at that point commodities, right? They should be like gas or electric or telephone. They should be priced at manufacturing plus 5. There's no companies that have any incentive to manufacture those drugs because they have a very small market. So you need to have a public stream of money to keep that pipeline flowing. I think we also need to consider having a publicly supported generic manufacturing company for drugs that are off patent or that are vital for public health. And you could set up a public benefit corporation, which is a private company that is not required to maximize shareholder value, but it could be doing something else good, like promoting education or health. And again, this goes back to Brazil. Brazil actually has companies that do this. So I think one model would be for us to have some kind of investment in that kind of system for older drugs.
We know what is wrong with the system that we have now. It's not that the system has failed or is broken, because it actually works extremely well. It was how it was set up to work. But what we know is how that system does not address the needs of the people, the majority of people living in the world. Based on what we've learned from that, we can start to build a new system. We can dream of something that would actually be able to address the majority of the world, would deal with neglected diseases, but would also deal with things like the non-communicable diseases and diseases where the drug prices are so high, and start to deal with it in a different way. And we have to find and learn from the principles and the lessons that we have from the system that we have now to create something new. Universities are going to be key in that because there's a huge amount of research, intellectual knowledge. We need economists, we need lawyers, we need political students, we need medical students, we need health students, we need all the basic researchers. We need the whole community of universities to somehow get engaged in that. And I think that this is going to be one of the big justice issues. It is one of the big justice issues of our time, the fact that not everybody is able to access health equally. And we're now going to start coming up with solutions of how we can actually address it.
There's no transparency with drug pricing. The whole capitalist system is premised on the idea that consumers should have access to information, right, in order to make informed decisions about their investments, right? So the first thing is to know what the price of something is. Well, in the United States, it's almost treated like a state secret. I mean, I would love it if there was a database that had the price that every public and private insurance program were paying for drugs. Purchasers would have much better authority to make smarter investment decisions. Since the public is paying for 85% or more of the cost of treatment for HIV, why doesn't the public have access to the information about how much we're paying? We really need to think about a different approach to these drugs for serious and life-threatening diseases, because having the public invest in the research at the beginning and pay for the drugs at the end, and the profit is being privatized by these pharma companies. In some levels, at some cases, to outrageous levels. So there's something a little wrong with that model.
I don't think there should be any patent laws for medicines. If you go back 30 years, there weren't any real patent laws for medicines. There were some sorts of patents, but they were not patents on producing. Look at countries like India, you look at many of the developing countries, and they allowed patents up to a certain extent, but then they didn't allow the final patents on medicines. What we've done with this system since TRIPS is we've made medicines be the same as a DVD or any other sort of object that you can patent. So it's just become a regular good. What we've lost is the fact that medicines are public goods. So if I could have my dream, I would make sure that there were no patents on medicines. Where we started from was always we needed to get rid of TRIPS. We have the Doha Declaration, which tried to make use of the flexibilities inside TRIPS, but it hasn't worked. It has worked to a certain extent, but not enough. So now what we need to do is look for new ways. I want to turn away from the patent system. I don't think that we can correct it. It's too entrenched. Since 2005, when all the countries were forced to change their patent laws, there isn't really that much we can do with it. Now we need to turn to a new system that doesn't rely on patents as a way to develop research and innovate drugs. Universities Allied for Essential Medicines is really a network of students who have come together because they believe that the world should be a world governed by equity and justice, and that one of the ways that we need to do that is through access to affordable medicine. So it's all part of a bigger picture, and one of the ways that they can do that is by working on their campuses while they are students and really be working with their fellow students to create awareness about what's going on in their own universities. Because universities are where we do all the research. And so what happens at the university translates directly into medicines. So if we can make sure that universities assure us or assure the community that the results of their research will be available for all, regardless of where they live, how much they earn, what nationality they are, etc., then we can really make a difference. And that's why universities are so important. And in fact, universities are becoming even more important because we're seeing now as the whole way that the pharmaceutical industry is changing, universities are really becoming the centre of more and more research. As pharmaceutical companies close down their labs, they look to university labs. What's special about university labs? They are funded by public money. Many of them. So much of the research that's being done by those public labs is being paid for by us. Yet what happens when they come out of those labs, they go to a pharmaceutical company and they're no longer affordable. And they're making profits of the money that we invested. So you students have a really important role to play in that.
I probably would have raised the price higher. is probably what I would have done.
Why?
I think healthcare prices are inelastic. I could have raised it higher and made more profits for our shareholders, which is my primary duty. And again, no one wants to say it. No one's proud of it. But, this is a capitalist society, capitalist system, and capitalist rules. And my investors expect me to maximize profits, not to minimize them or go half or go 70%, but to go to 100% of the profit curve that we're all taught in MBA class. The second question is about reputation.
But if you're maximizing profit for your shareholders, why are you spending it on R&D?
Well, that's going to maximize long-term earnings.
Okay.
So those R&D investments, we hope to make 10, 20, 50 times our money on.
And so essentially here, you think that patients aren't being harmed, and that,
try to be a CEO yourself. See how it goes. Try to maximize profits and not get kicked out of a company, and let me know how that goes for you. Price drug's really low. You won't last very long. It's people that are willing to make these hard choices, grow earnings for their shareholders, and again, try to do the right thing with those profits. And make sure that no patient's left behind. Make sure that we invest in a disease that hasn't had a new investment in 70 years. We're sitting on one drug for toxoplasmosis that's 70 years old. You don't have to have a PhD in infectious diseases to know that's a dangerous place to be. We're developing 3 new drugs for toxoplasmosis, which, by the way, will be very expensive if they ever get approved. But hopefully we'll replace pyrimethamine as the backbone of therapy that we've been relying on too long. It'd be like interferon still being the backbone for Hep C. It wasn't a pretty picture, and we're all happy that Gilead's here, right?
Gilead bought the rights to this product after it was already showing promising results in phase 2 clinical trials. They bought the company, and hence the rights, for $11 billion. The company that they bought, Pharmaceutical, our SEC filings show they spent about $300 million developing the drug. So, what is the justification? There is none. The only thing the only thing that matters for Gilead is just how much money are we going to make, and that's the only thing the price is connected to.
Part of the reason we're both sitting here today is this new moment or opportunity within UAEM, which is really we're becoming a global organization, and the opportunity for impact is huge as a result. I think you were saying now we have 39 chapters in 11 countries in Europe alone.
Yes.
And I think we're about 15 to 18 countries at the last count, so including Australia, Malaysia, Hong Kong. Yeah, exactly, India.
I think each person that comes into UAM does come with a personal passion for this work, and it's very impressive to spend time with individual UAMers, because when you think about each individual passion that is then coming together, I think our goal is to support and fuel that passion, and to help people to realize what they really feel strongly about. It's a long battle, what we're fighting. This is not something that changes overnight. And so it's about supporting the UAM students who are really passionate. They may not see something change immediately, but they really are contributing to something that's big, and our goal is to accompany that for a period of time as well.
So I think the key way that we bring about awareness, like you said, to the issue of access to medicines globally is through empowering our students and encouraging our students to then go out and empower their chapters and grow their chapters, so that people are working together, but to understand how things like intellectual property affects access to medicines.
Absolutely. I think students are in a very unique position. They have access to researchers, they have access to the people who are actually doing the research. They have an enormous amount of legitimacy, and that's really special. It's a big chance to get people to change when they're students, and as people move on from UAM and become alumni, hopefully they carry that with us. We call it a UAM family.
Yeah.
So hopefully when you leave UAM, you don't actually leave UAM. You keep on with the issues, you stay part of the family, and you continue to care and to lobby for what we believe should be the paradigm on access to medicines.
And I think that's one of the most exciting things as well, as you see actually right now in the conference we have an alumni panel happening, and seeing the ways in which UAEM is indirectly influencing the future leaders in a lot of these different organizations. And even if those students are not staying directly within public health, their way of thinking is going to be different as a result of their experience, so that they can think about those issues in whatever jobs they're able to do, whether that's social sector or not. And I know we have people now from the White House to universities to research at NIH. And hopefully in another 10 years, we'll really begin to see the effects of how the impact of our alumni.
Beyond the university role in making the medicines, universities are also part of the policy-making landscape. And so universities have a key role to play in global policies, on stuff that's going on at the World Health Organization. And now what we're talking about a lot is alternative research and development agendas, and the role that universities are already and will need to play in order to try to create a system that is just and equitable, and which turns away from the current biomedical model, which has all its dysfunctionalities, or is not able to address, or does not seek to address the needs of people in lower and middle income countries and poorer people. So we really need to create a parallel one, and universities can play a key role in that.
Make medicines for people, not for profit. Negotiate a global R&D agreement now.
So like fill out here.
Wow. You know, I usually make the mistake of saying make medicines for profit, not people.
Registration.
Of course, candid is better. Very candid. Hi, Justin. Hi.